What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're gonna love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
Welcome back to Top Bins, the show bringing you all the action from the Premier League and SerieA. I'm your host, Matt, joined by my co-host, Dom. Dom, how are you tonight?
Doing all right. I took a personal day today, so I didn't go into work today. So, tried to enjoy my day as much free time that I had. I had to get some stuff done. So, but I'm doing all right. How are you?
Doing great. Living, thriving, surviving. We could all use a personal day. You got them, use them. Before we get into the show, we got a sponsor. We got to talk about here. Really, the entire Underground Sports Philadelphia network is brought to you by PHI Apparel. Apparel company, PHI Apparel Company provides unique designs and high-quality clothing for the great fans of Philly. Their original designs for all. There's no doubt you'll stand out in the crowd. You can use our promo code UNDERGROUND for 10% off any apparel when you shop online at phiapparel.co. That is phiapparel.co. Use code UNDERGROUND for 10% off any apparel. 10% croissant. I don't know if they're handing out croissants, but yeah, some good stuff on there, and keep it locked on because new apparel could be at that site. So maybe just keep your eyes peeled on it. That's all I'll say. We had a fantastic weekend, and we've had some pretty good midweek games already. We're going to be reflecting on the weekend that was. We're going to start with what has been the game of the season in a lot of ways in the Premier League between Liverpool and Manchester City over the last 5 years. Pretty much every time these two teams play, it has either been very high stakes, high anxiety, if you happen to be a fan of either team, and usually a good amount of goals. Didn't quite deliver on the goals. Definitely over-delivered on the tension and I think the feistiness. This is, I think, we've talked a lot about where this rivalry, where these two teams rank and amongst English history and some of those great teams. I think a lot of people point to the Arsenal Manchester United games of the late 90s, early 2000s, and I think this game was the closest that we've gotten to those types of games in terms of like the ferocity and I think some of the pent-up anger. We've seen that bubble up a few times, but I think these two teams have played each other enough now too where once you start to have those like constant meetings, even just outside the league, they played each other last year in the FA Cup as well. They played the Community Shield again this year, and the fact that they just had these like tight encounters, and I feel like that is really like brought up the tension an extra level. I get the sense too that honestly, like frankly, they hate each other now. I don't care what anyone says, especially Bernardo Silva really seems to hate Liverpool, and I think everyone kind of takes some joy in just sticking elbows into ribs a little bit, and that's all part of it. And it got a little ugly, like post game, where like Manchester City briefed these reporters to say that Klopp was being xenophobic when he just said that City can spend any amount of money that they want, which is true. And they since had to delete that because now Klopp is taking legal action against the authors who wrote that article. So, congrats, Bozo. You sold out for some oil money. Good for you. About the game though, Liverpool won. Manchester City.
You're a very happy man. You are a very, very happy man.
Listen, I gotta say, on a personal note, it was a great sports weekend for me.
It really was.
I went into this not totally thinking that I really would have put money on Manchester City winning this. The Friday, Konate gets injured, and that means that Milner's going to have to start at right back. Gomez is going to have to shuffle into center back, and Milner against Phil Foden was something that I think made me very worried, at least the lead to the game. But it ended up not mattering all that much. I would say, largely speaking, Liverpool were able to control Manchester City's chances. This is a team that's been scoring a lot of goals in a lot of different ways, and Erling Haaland had some half chances, which for him, are just as good as full chances for everyone else. But largely speaking, Liverpool controlled them pretty well and had some good chances of their own. They get the lone goal through just a fantastic Mohamed Salah goal. Just By the way, I mean, João Cancelo, I'm surprised he's not getting the Trent Alexander-Arnold treatment because he gets spun like a BeyBlade at half field. I'm just saying, if that's Trent, that's like the national and international discourse for the next 3 weeks is about how bad defensively he is and what a brain-dead loser he is. Weird how no one does that for João Cancelo. I don't know.
I'll say this, that when you link up one of the best goal scorers in the world with one of the best passing goalies in the world, you get results like that. I mean, that was just a beautiful play, just from the stop, gets it real quick. Allison sees him up the field and just plays it. Like, the quality from Salah too, and that wasn't the first time in the game that he was like one-on-one with the keeper. Ederson made a good save on another one that he had earlier in the game. So, I mean, to me, it looked like a classic Liverpool, like win, right? They kind of just catch you on a counter. You're going to pay for it. And then their defense is going to shut it down. To me, it looked like they tried to make Haaland beat them or like kind of play to Liverpool's strength in the back, which is like being in the air, right? Because those were like the half chances that Haaland got, right? It was mainly just like headers. And although it's Haaland and he can score one of those, like you said, it's not an easy task when you're going up against Virgil van Dijk in the air, or Joe Gomez is kind of like putting slight pressure. It's a very strong showing from Liverpool, who have been who have been questioned, recently. So.
Yeah, by recently, I mean this whole season, yes.
Yeah.
A classic in the sense, too, that Liverpool were thoroughly outpossessed in this game. 63% possession for Manchester City in this one. But if you're going by XG, Liverpool 2.07, Manchester City 0.98 for the game. In-game XG, again, I have to say it every time. It can be a little wonky. But I think it can show, maybe who had the higher quality chances. Liverpool, I think, again, it was a little bit more like vintage, maybe like 17, 18, with a little bit more like of the later season's defending ability. Just in terms of, again, like catching teams on the break, and finding that speed and that pace, which can be so devastating. And, Darwin Núñez comes on and probably could have had an assist. It really could have just been all casual at the end, 2-0 win, but just chose wrong. He made up for it today by scoring a great goal against West Ham and really almost had a hat trick. He's getting into, again, Luis Suarez territory, where he sort of has these like amazing moments that you just can't believe what you're watching, and then he has these other moments just like, I don't know how this guy's professional.
Can't believe what I'm watching.
Yes, he takes it to the extreme on both sides, but I've been really impressed with him in this last 2 weeks. I think really since returning from the suspension, I think you look at his underlying numbers. This is a guy that, and again, you saw today with his goal, that is kind of just ready to explode with goals. If you're going by like XG per 90, he's actually outperforming Erling Haaland. You actually have to put the goals in you're right. It's one thing to have them be theoretical, but you have to actually convert them into something. But I think this is a guy that I wouldn't be shocked if we're like in February, March, talking about like what a great debut season it's been for him. He's on 14 Premier League goals, something like that, or 15 at that stage. Like, he just has that in him. He's such a high volume player that I think that's certainly within his wheelhouse.
I wanna speak on the red card incident
for
close
Klopp.
to the end
Go
of the
ahead.
game. Yeah, for Klopp. I get why he got it, but at the same time, coming from a coach's perspective, you gotta get on the refs when it comes to the safety of your players. There were multiple times in this game that Salah was fouled, like clearly, and nothing was called, and it happened right in front of a referee. And if it's getting to that point where the other team's allowed to play dirty and the refs are just letting it happen, you got to step in and say something. I mean, I think it was Rodri, right? At first, that was the first one. He pulled Salah back, took his foot out, didn't get any ball, no card, no stoppage of play, nothing. And then the incident that happened down in the corner, kind of like falling over each other and then gets taken down. But Thiago slips and happens to take out a player because his momentum takes him and he gets a yellow card. I mean, the reffing inconsistencies would make me as a coach angry. So I totally get it, especially in a very emotionally charged match. Like you said earlier, right? These two teams hate each other. It's really like the Premier League derby. It's the closest thing you get to like a derby day without it being a derby. And, you know, he gets the red card. I get it. He got in the sideline ref's like face out of his technical area, but still.
He had been screaming all game too at the ref because of, like you said, though, there's a
these
lot of
things,
instances where really the calls were not coming, and people are saying like he was letting the game flow. There's a difference between letting the game flow and just not calling very obvious fouls. The Rodri one against Salah was ridiculous too because that almost led to a City goal and it would have had to be called back, like you saw with Haaland's foul, which was a foul, by the way. I can't believe people are saying that it wasn't. And even if that one wasn't called, I read Alisson actually had secured the ball in his possession and it was kicked away from him, leading to Foden's goal. So if Haaland's foul was not called, that would have been called. So I don't know. The Bernardo one was crazy because, I mean, you've seen the pictures too where like he's clearly dragging Salah down. And then actually there's a video where he gets up and like takes like 2 steps backwards and throws an elbow at him and kicks out at him. And that's somehow not reviewed.
And then he's pushing multiple. He's pushing Diogo Jota.
Yeah,
he pushed Virgil van Dijk when he came over to kind of diffuse the situation.
Bernardo Silva like has absolutely no fear, which in a way I respect. So yeah, Klopp deserved to get red carded. You can't do what he did, obviously, and I think he even admitted that. But you also don't blame him in the heat of the moment, kind of getting fired up about it, and losing his cool a little bit when you feel like the calls just started going your way, and yeah, like you said, you have to protect the players. So interesting game. I mean, you could break it down in so many ways. I think what's interesting for Liverpool too is just it's another kind of lineup shift. You have this kind of double pivot between Fabinho, Thiago to start the game off, and Henderson finds his way into this game, and yeah, that 2-man midfield has kind of been Liverpool's new look. Now in the last few weeks. And I think you have to say the performance has been better with it. They won now 2 games straight in the league, playing a sort of a 2-man midfield today against West Ham. They're playing like a 4-4-2, not even like a kind of 4-2-3-1 like you saw a little bit. Formations are, they're a little more fluid than I think people want them to be. Like City were not really totally playing a 4-3-3 on this game. It was really like at times like a 5-back with like, I don't know, like a 5-2-3 at times, and they go into possession and they're playing like a 2-3-5. Like no one's actually setting up to play a 2-3-5, but within the game situations, you find yourself there. And City are still a very good team. This obviously doesn't say too much about them, but I think the bigger picture that has to be talked about is this does have an influence on the title race. And Jurgen Klopp was asked about this before the game. He says, yeah, this game has always been kind of a title decider. It has always been, an inflection point of the title, and it still is, just not for us. Now it's more about City and Arsenal, at least at this stage of this season. That's what it's about. Although I'll say this, Liverpool were 13 points adrift of City in January of last year, and it goes all the way to the last day. They make up all that ground. They're currently just 11 points off of Arsenal. Like
11. It's close. It's not that much.
In October. I'm just saying it's not inconceivable. That's it. It's just not. Let's not pretend like it's just a totally insurmountable lead. That's it. That's all. I'm not gonna go crazy. But stranger things have happened. And I'll tell you this: like, if you're telling me that Liverpool rattle off 12 straight wins, they can do that just as much as City can, and they've done it. They've done it in the same way City has over the last few years. I know I've been a little down on them this season because the performances haven't been there, but if we start to see more of like, that was the best game that they've played this season, and that's what I think what was so bizarre to me is coming into that game, they've not played that well. Really, truly, the last time they played that well was when they played Manchester City in the Community Shield, where they looked great and they looked really competent, and they thought, wow, like, they're back again. Like we're just gonna run this back again with Liverpool and City. There's no guarantee of it, but I'm just saying, no one would have seen Liverpool being in contention for a quadruple, like 7 minutes away from it. Like they were in last season, at the final stages, so much can change, through the rest of the season and post World Cup. And obviously, though, Liverpool had to stop getting injuries because Diogo Jota got hurt in this, unfortunately going to miss the World Cup. No clear timeline either on his injury either. Klopp just said it's going to be months, so that's obviously not ideal at all. And yeah, Matip is still out, and you still have some injury problems there for Liverpool. But altogether, a great game, and it's just put it in the record book for the compilations in the future, because like I said, I think we need to enjoy that we have these two teams playing the way they are, and I think this game really catered to every type of fan. Like some people, their biggest crush on this game was that it doesn't have that kind of extra edge, and this game really provided that extra edge. But I would also argue, if you've actually been watching this game over the last few years, it has always kind of had that extra edge. I don't know what more you could ask for when it's teams that are going to finish on 97 points respectively, and they're playing essentially a title decider. That's what we all want, even though it isn't on the actual last day. I don't know. Enough about Liverpool, Man City. We've given them enough airtime over the years as well. Arsenal beat Leeds somewhat controversially, some VAR interventions in this one, but they're 4 points clear at the top. We were supposed to get Arsenal Manchester City this week, but it got postponed, which is a bummer. Really would have loved to watch that. Chelsea beat Aston Villa 2-0. Apply some pressure there to Villa and Steven Gerrard, especially Steven Gerrard, because it seems like Villa really want to get Mauricio Pochettino in, which would be great. I love Gerrard, and I would swap him for Mauricio Pochettino, at least as a manager. And I think if Aston Villa can make that switch, they probably should. It has been disappointing for Villa to start. They're just above the relegation zone right now, and I think obviously with the spending they did not just this past summer, but really going back the last few seasons, this is not where Aston Villa wants to be. They have much higher ambition, and when you look at Gerrard's record too, it's really not any better. I think it's actually a point worse than Dean Smith's was last year when he got sacked to bring in Gerrard.
Yeah, I think Pochettino would be great for Villa. They need a change. They need a change of something, and maybe a new manager can bring that. Gerrard's got an experience. He'll find his way at a new club, wherever that may be. Where do you think he could end up? Do you think he coaches I know internationally, yes, he has coached in a different country, but technically that's still part of the United Kingdom, and he's staying on the same landmass. Do you think he could?
Easy though. Watch out.
I need to tiptoe around. What I'm saying between those two countries.
Because I'm tiptoeing in my road.
Do you think he goes to another country though, and can find success? I'd see him coaching a championship club. Or
if Gerrard is smart, he leaves his Villa job for a year and takes a championship job. That is I think if you're abandoning ego, that's where you go from here.
Hear me out. He coaches the Liverpool U23s.
No. He was already doing that. He left that to go to Rangers, and no. I don't think you don't go from managing a Premier League team to managing the U23s. I think he has higher ambition than that, which is fair, but there's no guarantee that you're going to be a great manager. That's just it.
Well, because the only reason I ask something like that is because you see, I don't want to draw this parallel to the NFL as a very reliable analogy, but you see head coaches who are unsuccessful. They'll find other jobs as an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, assistant coach, something like that. Do you think he if nothing.
Do you think him and
seems-
Frank Lampard are going to team up at Everton? Is that what you're
No,
asking?
heck no. First off, the thought of Steven Gerrard ever helping out Everton at all just makes
He was
no
apparently
sense.
on their short list, after Ancelotti.
That would be wild for me to see. But no, what I mean is like he teams up with Klopp and goes on his coaching staff. You don't think that would happen either? Like if none
absolutely not.
Listen, if none of the other managerial options sound like lucrative enough or like something that he wants to take, though, you know what I mean? Like no club wants to sign CVG except like Crew Alexandria. You know what I mean? Like if that was like the case, like you think he tries to?
No.
Okay,
No
fair
shot.
enough.
I think there's
Fair
a
enough.
0% chance of that. Like Klopp's staff is already like pretty set. Pep Linders is like the very clear number 2 and is more than likely, it seems, like being groomed to be like Klopp's like true replacement. And I just don't think there's room for Gerrard on that staff. And again, I think if he's smart, it feels like sort of inevitable that he's gone from Villa at this point. I think he just goes to a championship team, perhaps, or maybe even goes back to Scotland because Rangers are kind of struggling again a bit. I know Van Bronckhorst's position has been at least up for some debate from what I've seen. So maybe returns to Rangers, kind of rehabs the image a little bit. But I think it's a big step up to the Premier League level. It's a big step up to when you're going to a team like Villa that has like very clear ambition and expectations. And if you don't meet that, then
That's true.
Pochettino would be great. I think he'd be great for Villa. I think we've sort of been so removed from his like start with Southampton that we kind of forget that this is the kind of team and like incubation spot that's kind of been natural and good for Pochettino. So that would be exciting to see back. Shall we take a swim across the Mediterranean, Dom, and take a trip to Italy? Buon voyage to Napoli 3, Bologna 2. An exciting game. Totally, I'll be honest, didn't expect it to be as exciting as it was. I was expecting maybe 5 goals. I didn't expect it to be split amongst the teams in such a way.
Napoli could have had 5 goals with the way they were playing.
They could have, and that has been the story of Napoli this entire season. I think you could say you walk away from most Napoli games and think they could have scored 5 today. Unbeaten still. Good for them. And 25 goals on the season. Victor Osimhen, in the goals again today, over the weekend. Kvaratskhelia with a fantastic assist as well in this game to Osimhen for that goal. Bologna, though, I think there were moments it felt like they were going to claw one back. You have a pretty stinky attempt at a save from Meret that just kind of goes through his hands and probably should be saved from. I don't know, like Musa Barrow's like a player that I personally love a lot. So that felt good. It felt good to have some like in a week where like I really like fluffed up like with some Daka Ganda for Patson Daka, and then Musa Barrow and like Patson Daka are like my respective my respective loves from Italy and England that I'd like to see more of. I just want to see these guys play a little more. And
he was such a good talent at Atalanta. I feel the same way about Musa Barrow that you do. Like,
I think Musa Barrow's still good. Like he's still a massive.
He's still
talent.
a very good player.
He's also 23 still. He's been around. He's like one of these guys that we've just. Yeah. He's been like he came up at such a young age that it feels like he should be like 28 by now, but he's still 23 years old. Like he's still in breakout territory.
I do have to say though, this man, I don't think I've ever seen a player like Kvaratskhelia like come over to a top 5 league or come into Italy at such a young age and be so polished in his game. Like he gets the ball and he is just creative with it, whether it's a dribble, whether he's holding the play up so he can play a cheeky pass in, which is how he set up Mario Rui, which would have been a crazy goal if he scored that one. I mean, he just enables so much for them. He set that one play up where I think it was him, or he played the pass to the person who set up Politano, and Politano skied it. Like he's the guy that gets it going for them. And if he doesn't get it going, there's other players that do as well. I mean, Lobotka is just really making a name for himself this season as one of the like better, defensive mids in the league. He gets it done on the defensive end, and he also can play like a really good key pass to set up a chance. So Napoli has just so many options. They're playing really good soccer right now, and it doesn't seem like they're giving any signs of letting up right now. We always say about Spalletti that in January things change, but something about this team is a little different to me, and they have so many options off the bench. This was basically like a squad rotation for them, and it's still a very, very strong lineup. I mean, credit to Bologna. They're still looking for their first win in the season, but like they made it tough on Napoli. It was 1-1 at half, and then everything exploded in the second half. But I don't see Napoli letting up anytime soon.
Bologna have won this season, Dom. We only have 2 teams that have.
No. They said in the beginning of the game that they were still looking for their first win, maybe win away.
Perhaps the only 2 teams that'll win still are the same. It feels like every week. Cremonese, Sampdoria have still not found their way. Napoli, I think, outside of Real Madrid, best team in Europe right now. Like
Arguably, yeah.
I think you can maybe even argue that they've been just as good. Like they've been fantastic in the Champions League, fantastic domestically. Have passed so many tests. I just think been very, very good. It does strike me as a little different from last season, where there are games where like Napoli are just so clearly the better team, and and that wasn't happening quite as much last season. Osimhen was really carrying the load last year. I think offensively, we talked about that so much of the season. I think that's part of the reason for sort of their late season collapse. And obviously, too, it's helped that he hasn't had like that, 2 months off because of the injury and then AFCON, right? But Kvaradona coming in has been such a huge boost for them because really they didn't have that second creator last year. I think now, not only does that take the burden off of Osimhen, it also, quite literally, like tactically allows you to do so many different things, and allows the defense now to no longer just be able to hone in on one area and focus on Osimhen. Now there's a new threat to be aware of that just frankly wasn't present with Insigne last season. For Napoli, he was not that kind of direct player anymore. Couldn't really beat his man one-on-one. So,
and for what it's worth, I mean, they also went out and brought in Raspadori, and they also brought in Simeone. So they have multiple goal scoring options. If they want to go 2 strikers up top, they can go.
Even someone like Ndombele,
Yeah.
from the midfield who played in this game, and I thought looked pretty good.
Let's not look past Zielinski either.
Zielinski too has been like a mainstay, and I think he's really is one of like the most underrated like midfield players in Europe. Like I think he's just spectacular. I really think Napoli's, and it's amazing too when you think about like they lost Fabio Ruiz. Right, one of the reasons we were down on Napoli coming into the season is because of who they lost, and I think they deserve a ton of credit when you consider, who they lost, and yes, I know Insigne wasn't great, but it's still like a leadership figure that you lose. You lose Dries Mertens, again, maybe not like the best player at that stage in his career anymore. Still came on and scored some big goals for Napoli last season, but you lose Koulibaly, you lose Fabio Ruiz. Like there's some big names to part ways with, and it just hasn't. I don't know, just hasn't affected them really, maybe in the way that we expected it to. So. Shout out to Napoli, just showing us how much we do or maybe in fact don't know, when it comes to predicting results. Speaking of preseason predictions not turning out maybe the way we expected them to. Atalanta 2, Sassuolo 1. Another really exciting game this weekend that delivered on some promise and some action. Adam Lookman, just fantastic to start the season. He's been unreal. Really strong performance again. And Brendan Soppy, this young, he plays sort of like this fullback wide position for Atalanta, 20 years old, fantastic two just great assists in this game, and he had a few other like really like key passes. He looks good. If there's one thing Atalanta are going to do is every year introduce you to some young player that that just is spectacular and beds right in. And I'm looking forward to seeing Sapi in the Premier League in like 4 years after like I don't know what people would be buying players for in 4 years. I guess like 130 million would be like a normal price. So looking forward to that. But Atalanta 2, Sassuolo 1, had some great goals in this one. It's another big win for Atalanta as they march towards the top of the table. Sassuolo, a little bit of a disappointing result. They start off obviously a goal advantage, and they've just kind of had this happen to them now 2 straight weeks where they're kind of in it with these top teams. They lose 2-1 to Inter last week and then lose 2-1 to Atalanta this week. Like, they just have not been able to really find like that killer edge in some of these games to get over the line. And I wonder if Sassuolo of last year are maybe winning these games. When you have Raspadori and Scamacca still within the team. Berardi nearly had an equalizer late on that just clipped the bar and almost sunk into the far 90. Would have been a top bench trademark, but it wasn't to be. So Atalanta hold on, and I mean, the longer they stay within like striking distance, the more it's like hard to not sell yourself on the idea of Atalanta really doing something special.
They definitely keep the pressure on Napoli. I mean, they just find a way to win every single time. I do want to give a shout out to Kyriakopoulos for that goal he scored for Sassuolo. What a goal that was. I mean, near post, top corner, full volley, like power, finesse.
This goal,
like
Lookman's goal as well was spectacular. Like, just like
crazy.
very like aesthetically pleasing, like cuts it back onto the opposite foot and just like curls it to get the bar down kind of effect. Small ripple on the net, like very, very like easy on the eye.
Yeah, aesthetically pleasing goals, Yes, that's what we like.
If ASMR was like in video form, it would look like that, like it would just be very, very nice to look at. So I really appreciate it.
It's obvious for Sassuolo that they struggle when Berardi doesn't start, right? Where are these goals coming from? I don't think that Pinamonti is the right fit for them up top. Davide Fratesi looks very good.
Speaking of potential departures, I
think he wants out of there fast. I'm telling you.
Yeah, he almost was gone this summer. I think Sassuolo, in some ways, maybe happy Italy aren't at the World Cup, because Fratesi, I think, would be. I don't know if he'd be starting in Italy's midfield, but he feels like a bench. You're right. He'd be in the squad, and I feel like, maybe it would be a guy that makes an impact, and it'd be hard to keep him this January. I feel like, because of that, you probably keep him at least this year. But
what other choices do Italy have? They have Tonali. They have Barella. Who else?
You put it that way, and maybe No Stefano Sensi love. We're not doing that. We're not doing.
We're talking Pessina because Monza's doing well. Like, I just don't know. Fratesi.
I would say someone like Verratti, if he's healthy, obviously is like in that midfield. But
and Jorginho, and Jorginho. So you have your 4, right? But like, he's that other guy that on that third group game against one of the maybe arguably the worst team in the group of your matchups, he makes his way in, gets an assist or a goal, and changes the course of his career. But Italy's
that's all very hypothetical because Italy,
super
of course,
it's super far in the future. But
and we'll be able to watch him in person perhaps in 2026.
So right? Is Verratti still going to be there? Is Jorginho still going to be there? Who knows?
If Verratti follows the path that most other like generational Italian midfielder paths do, yes, he will still be playing in 2026. He will absolutely still be playing in 2026.
Or if we know the Federation of Italian Calcio, like they like to keep the old regime as long as possible until it hurts their success to the point where
it's like those people that drive a car at like 350,000 miles, like it still runs fine, like it actually doesn't run fine. You can't do 60 in that thing. You can't take it on the highway. I don't know what to tell you. Elsewhere in Italy, this was one of the games of the weekend coming into it. Lazio and Udinese, a 0-0 draw. a war of attrition in this one too, because Immobile gets injured in this, pulls up a hamstring. I haven't gotten clarity on like the severity of that injury just yet, but not great obviously, because he's been like obviously their best goal scorer. He's been top scorer in the league so far, so hopefully not out too long there. But a little bit surprising when you consider these teams. Now Lazio have been still the best defensive record in SerieA, but both these teams have certainly been known for their goals this season, and Udinese especially, found ways to score, especially late in games, and he did have a few moments, but a little surprising to see it end in a 0-0. These teams, again, Lazio just won 3 straight games by a 4-0 scoreline, so we'll see. We'll see how this gets on, but a little surprise at that draw.
Well, Udinese are finding a little bit of a struggle now. They drew then. They just lost in the Coppa Italia today, October 19th, to Monza.
Yeah,
they lost 2-1. So a little bit of a struggle. And Kyle just gave us a little update. Immobile ruled out until 2023.
Wow, that's fucking tough right there.
Well,
That's
the only bright side to it for Lazio is that the season takes a break early, because of the World Cup. So there is a little bit of time that him being out won't hurt their season. Normally, there's 3-4 weeks of games.
2023 sounds worse than it actually is. Really, that's just out until after the World Cup, because they're not even like England, where once they're back from the World Cup, they're like right back. They're still taking their sort of like winter break that pretty much every other league other than England takes.
However, he'll be out for games against Juventus, Atalanta, and Roma.
Yes, it's a bad stretch of time to be injured. I'll say this: Zaccagni looked really good in this game, and I think last year had a tough first season there, but if I see that Zaccagni again in games this season, I'll be a little more hopeful about his future there, because he looked really bright. He was really only once Immobile went off. I think really the only bright attacking spot that they had, especially in terms of the freight. He's like what I think people think Felipe Anderson is. Zaccagni actually is. Like this like direct kind of player that takes guys on 1v1 and creates a lot of like opportunities. Like Felipe Anderson really doesn't do that as much as I think people think, and I just think they've kind of switched bodies.
They're too busy putting Felipe Anderson in FIFA and using him like that, and they think he does that in real life.
And for those playing at home, that was Dom's first mention of FIFA. 37 minutes in this 37th minute.
Break out the bingo boards, guys.
37th minute. Dom's inevitable FIFA reference.
I hate you sometimes.
Inter, Roma, and Milan all keep pace at the top of the table here as well, which is it's good to see. I mean, we're getting, again, just like we had in Serie A last season, a really exciting race. At some point, we talked about it last year, it is very rare for there to be like a 3-horse race for a title. In most leagues, it almost always comes down to 2 teams. It's hard to really tell which 2 teams. My gut right now, if you're telling me right now, I gotta pick 2 teams. I think I'd be picking Milan and Napoli.
You think Atalanta falls off?
I do, and I love the way that you sounded a little British when you said that. I really liked it. You had a little. It's giving Harry Styles. That's all I'll say.
Well, I was trying to,
in a good way,
pronounce my Italian names with an accent, with proper pronunciation.
No, I'm not hating.
You kind of leaked out into the rest, right? So.
He gave me a little. North London there.
You think Atalanta falls off in it?
Bergamo, bruv. Yes, I do, because Atalanta have done that every year. I know, and maybe that's not a great analysis, but part of me, like when I watch these teams, what I see from Napoli says to me, this is a very strong team that I would be surprised if they're not in the title. I really would, and I think they were perhaps in some ways unlucky to not be more in the title race last season. I think, again, we've sort of washed from our memory that they were top of the table going into the winter break last year. Like they were very good. They were very good all the way up to December last year. Milan are so good. Like I've seen nothing from Milan that has said to me like they're not capable of at least like competing for the title again this year. I felt that way coming into the season. Nothing I've seen has really scared me off that. Now I think the goal scoring at times has been a little a little concerning. But as long as Rafael is playing the way he is, Teo Hernandez has played well, and I mean, France could have a very early World Cup exit, so Teo Hernandez could get some rest. It's France chaos here, by the way.
They got a proper Ballon d'Or winner now. It's just
and no holding Ballon d'Or winner has ever won the World Cup, Dom. And it is an alternate France year. There's already drama. Kylian Mbappe wants to buy out his contract with PSG. He doesn't want to go away to France and do promo videos because he wants his own image rights. I'm telling you, it's a mess. It's a mess. It already is a mess. However, back to the main point. I just think what I've seen from Milan so far this year, nothing has told me that this team can't go on. They're really no different than they were last season. And last season it was good enough to win the title, and then they clamped down the head. By the way, they've done these results of the last month without Mike Maignan.
Yes, that's a fair point.
I don't know. I think they're so good. They're going to get some players back. From injury over the course of the season too. They've been probably the most unlucky, I would say, of like the top teams with injury. Maybe Roma, just in terms of like inopportune timing, have had it a little worse, but and maybe Juventus too, I guess you could say, like injury wise, but I'm not sure Juventus are on that level. Like they just haven't, like, I don't think Juventus is even fully healthy with Paul Pogba here and Chiesa comes back, like if they're really at that level. But it'd be interesting to see what Juventus do second half of the season. Not title sense, of course, but in terms of finishing for like Champions League.
It's actually kind of interesting to me that you're a lot more optimistic about Milan than I am. I mean, yes, they're getting these wins, and they're scraping out these wins against teams that should be very comfortable for them to win.
How's that any different to them last year?
I was just going to say that, right? Like, yes, they were like that again last year. As a fan of the club, what I want to see is improvement. I don't want to be stagnant there, because what's obvious right now is it's enough to get it done for the majority of the SerieA season, and then they can show up in the big games against the bigger teams. But now you're also, you want to have more ambition. You want to become competitive in Europe. And it's becoming very apparent in the Champions League about, their form and how they're playing. It's good enough to get it done in Italy. It's not good enough to get it done in Europe just yet. And again, yes, we're dealing with injuries and this and that. So it's hard to rotate the squad properly, especially for those midweek games. But I think that having Maignan back is going to help. I think that, I'm pretty sure Rebic was hurt, and he's come back from injury, and just get back into the swing of things. I do agree with you. If Rafael Leao is playing and he's still playing the way that he's been playing, Milan are always, in favor of winning. He is pretty high for the Ballon d'Or rankings as well, for someone who just burst onto the scene. So, it is what it is. Hopefully they turn it around and can kind of compete with Napoli early on, regain some of that distance. They're 3 points behind, so no need to ring any alarms. But
I think Milan have looked good. I mean, even in that game against Napoli that they played, again, they looked good. I'll say this. I know it was a dark horse team coming into the season. I hadn't totally bought in yet, but I kind of have no choice but to buy Roma stock because they've been very good, and I think it hasn't totally been given its full. Here's the thing too: if you look at Roma's underlying numbers, they're like heavily underperforming on XG. And I think I mentioned this when we did our draft, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to take them, is because I feel like there's got to be some return. Sometimes you're going to have these like variance years, but typically like you're going to be within roughly your XG, if not overperforming it, if you're a good team. And I just have to imagine that they find at least some return to the balance here. Their expected goals this season per FB Ref, which is my favorite because I use the Stats Bombs model, which I think is my preferred. 20.1 expected goals so far this season. They have actually scored 13 goals. They're underperforming.
That's actually crazy.
They're underperforming by 7 goals, which is significant. Just for like a reference point, Napoli have 21.4 expected goals, have actually scored 25. Milan have 18 expected goals. They have scored 20. And for the good teams, it's not like really like uncommon for them to overperform their XG by 2 or 3 goals over the course of a season, right? And perhaps even more. You know, we've seen teams finish with like 8 or 9 more because better players finish expected goals at a higher rate because expected goals is based off average, shooter position and strength. Udinese, 13.6 expected goals, have actually scored 19. So I just think if Tammy Abraham can find some form, like some true goal scoring form, really, I truly mean it. Like, I think Napoli, Milan are maybe the 2 out of the top 6 right now for me. They're like, I think could be fighting out for the title. There is a world where Roma are fighting for a title in May. There really is. And I know that like people may clown that or whatever. And I know Roma have not delivered on that promise a lot this century, but they have like the defensive structure for sure as well. But if they can catch up to that goal scoring, this could be a really, really frightening team because they have played well so far this year.
I agree.
I didn't expect you to elaborate much because I know how much you don't. I know about your Roma disdain, but I'm glad you at least agreed. That was more than I expected.
Well, I was when right at the end of when you were talking, I looked over and I had the PHI apparel page back up, and they have one for the Union, and it's like a silhouette of Steve Blake, and it says "Wake and Blake."
Yeah.
And I kind of just looked at it and was like,
Andre Blake, you're thinking of Steve Blake.
Not Steve Blake.
The gritty white point guard from the Trailblazers.
Former Maryland Terp, but yes, sorry, Andre Blake.
Different people. People.
Excuse me. Forgive me. You know what's funny?
Boy.
I will say this about the table. Inter is keeping pace at the top, but they're 3 points out of a Europa League spot, let alone trying to get into that top 4. So, again, you were talking about Liverpool making up 11 points like it's nothing. I mean, like 3 points or like a 6-point gap, 7-point gap for Roma or for Inter, I mean, isn't really that much. They've had some struggles this year. Whenever Lukaku ends up coming back, that'll be big for them. But, I really don't think that they're really keeping pace at the top per se when it comes to SerieA when you have the top 3 teams all within like 2 points of each other. They're constantly just pulling away from that gap. Like you're seeing it with Juventus as well. Like they're a lot closer to a team like Salernitana than they are. Right? What's the gap between Juve and Salernitana in the table?
Juventus have 16 points. Salernitana has 10. The gap from Juventus to Roma is 6 points as well. So.
Yeah, so like they're right smack dab of being like right there or in a really good spot. So like,
if you're making the case for Juventus, it's the case that I laid out where Pogba comes back healthy and looks good. Di Maria's healthy for the second half of the season. You get Chiesa back, which I think will be a huge addition for them. I think, again, we sort of washed away the idea of like Chiesa returning and what that might look like for this team and how much better they looked in the moments that we saw Chiesa Vlahovic last season, seeing that link up. Now, Chiesa isn't going to come in right away and be the player that he was. We typically don't see players return from ACL injuries and like that. They're right back, but I do think there's a world Juventus are better in the second half of the season, although I'm not totally bet on that. There's seemingly not getting rid of Allegri, mostly for financial reasons, but you could at least, like, if you're being optimistic, I could see the case for Juventus being better, but I'm not totally bought in. I could totally see the case for Inter being better, though. I could totally see the case for Inter being more consistent, and I think they've been a little unlucky in this first quarter of the season. I will say, I think they've been a little unlucky.
Objective me will agree with that one.
It's hilarious because they've been very unlucky in the league and very lucky in the Champions League. Yeah.
Well, that's why I said that point like a week or two ago about like it doesn't seem like Inzaghi's just like focusing on the Champions League because like they've struggled in the league. Now
the
he's
bounces
just, like,
have just gone
whatever.
Right for him in the Champions League and have not gone right for them in the league. I really think that's just what it comes down to sometimes because it's still 10 games is not a huge sample size. There could be some randomness thrown in there, and they've had not the easiest schedule, to start the season. It's not like they've been playing like cupcakes, to start the year. So
It's funny you said an optimistic approach to Juventus would be that they recover from this. My optimistic approach is that they continue to sink. I mean, you want me to be optimistic? Yeah, Juventus will continue to struggle, and
some days you're the Titanic, some days you're the iceberg. You know,
and Salernitana finishes above Juventus. Like that's my type of optimism right there.
I think you get a little carried away. I think with Salernitana finishing above Inter.
Hey.
Yeah, they're only 8 points behind, Dom. They'll
right
totally
outside the top 10.
Yeah, they'll make that ground right up. They'll make that ground right up, I'm sure.
Hey,
if you'd like, we can make a friendly wager on that. I'll take it all day.
Listen, they're if one win and a Sassuolo, Empoli, and Torino loss can put them up right behind Juventus. Like they're right there. They're chomping at the bit.
You want to make a pod bet on it? If you're feeling so encouraged, I will take you.
What are we betting?
Just like we did with Arsenal Tottenham. It's just a friendly bet
just a
between
friendly
friends.
Bet? No type of content is going to be
no.
made out of this.
I mean, I'll make fun of you when you're wrong, but I won't.
Nah.
Inter are going to be fine. I know you don't like to hear it. I know you don't like to hear it.
I'm not saying Inter's falling below Salernitana. I don't think that at all. No. I would have to be.
That's what I thought you were saying this entire time. Juventus aren't either.
No, Juventus.
No.
Like, there's a better chance of Juventus having it happen than Inter, but
yes.
Nah, I'm still not taking that bet. That's all for the shock value. You know, you gotta.
That's your math brain. Your math brain taking over.
Listen. Like Skip Bayless does this all the time, right? And he gets a ton of viewers from it. So you know, I'm trying to get that shock value. Get some new people to just listen to the pod just so they can get angry. You know, like have you ever seen that? Like people see like tweets of like something and it makes them angry, but they're gonna watch the video anyway just so they get more angry and make a comment about it. Like
the negative feedback loop that we have built ourselves with social media and news is that people are actually more likely to engage with content that they dislike and that upsets them rather than content.
So let me upset some people. Let me upset some people.
Yeah, let's just say something crazy. Let's
wait, within reason. Right, like my little thing about Scotland and England earlier, making some negative reactions.
Yeah, let's get the referendum back. Let's get Scotland out of the UK. Let's try that again.
Oh man, yeah, no, Salernitana. I would like to see Salernitana in the top 10, but they're definitely not finishing above Juventus.
Okay, I'm glad we could. I'm glad we reached that conclusion. I'm glad we got there in the end.
Let the hot takes rip, right?
I'm glad we got there in the end. That's all I'll say. Dom, anything to say? Any other inflammatory comments before we get out of here?
No. But I did get a haircut.
Looks good. That's a nice haircut, Tom. You look good.
Bang.
It's great. What's really good for podcasts is showing off something visual. I think people. If you want to see Dom's haircut, you could go to YouTube.
You gotta watch the YouTube.
Underground Sports Philadelphia.
Visual podcasts are the future. That's where it gets started, right? Like
I guess.
I mean, we have a. I don't know. You gotta watch the YouTube videos to figure it out.
My man's like, Christ. No more personal days for you on podcast days. Your brain's getting a little soupy.
Well, I had to make up for last week. I was very not involved last week. So
hey, self-care. It's what matters. I'm only joking. Nice haircut, Dom. You look great. Go to YouTube, Underground Sports Philadelphia. Check out the Top Ends video. See Dom's nice haircut. Only comment, nice haircut, Dom.
Icy.
Sick fade, bro. We'll be back next week talking about this weekend's games. And by the way, I mean, just keep it in mind. TikTok, my friends, we're a month away from the World Cup. So keep that in the back of your brains. Keep it locked and loaded on the Top Ends feed because we'll be back next week, and we'll talk to you next week.